Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. We have hit 12 o'clock. So welcome everyone. Howdy, I'm Joni Carswell. I am the CEO at TxN by Nature, and we are very excited to be kicking off our virtual series today, and even more excited that each of you are joining us. We have leaders from all across Texas representing conservation, community, industry. So we're really excited to bring all of you together today and have a lot of content planned. As many of you know, TxN by Nature exists to advance conservation across Texas and beyond. We bring conservation and business together. We act as a catalyst and an accelerator for conservation programs and projects, and we act as a strategic resource to industry across Texas. We believe that this type of collaboration is the future of conservation in Texas and beyond, and we really strive for conservation to be part of every Texan's life, at home, at work, at play. So today you'll hear from projects that exemplify science and exemplify collaboration. These projects are TxN by Nature conservation wranglers. They were selected based on their scientific approach and their collaborative approach. They show that conservation is good not only for natural resources, but for our long-term health and economy as well. Each year, TxN by Nature's Conservation Wrangler program opens applications at the end of November and closes them at the end of January. We select 6 projects during that time to work very closely with over the course of 18 months. We work with these projects on anything that they need: marketing, strategy, partnership development, publicity and awareness, anything that can take those projects and make them bigger and more impactful across the state of Texas. So we are excited to highlight a few of these programs today and more throughout the course of our virtual series. And we're excited for all of us to learn and engage in dialogue around these projects. So Taylor, if you'll hit the next slide. Just want to say that given where we are in 2020, I'm betting that most of you are pretty familiar with Zoom by now. If you are not, this is a conversation. We want to hear your questions. I know that a lot of you are saying hello right now, but if you have not already identified it, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a double speech bubble that is for Q&A. Please do type your questions in there. We'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of the content today. And any that we don't answer live, we'll be following up to make sure that we are continuing the conversation. If you are having trouble with the Q&A, please send us an email. We're monitoring that as well. info@texnbynature.org. And also, if there are folks in your organizations who were not able to join today, please look at the YouTube channel. We'll share on social media later today, but the content will be available later today as well. So as we get started, if you want to hit next, Taylor, I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to all of our members and our sponsors who've made the series today possible and free for all to attend. Thank you to our 2020 Conservation Wrangler Summit sponsors, in particular to iconic Texas brands, HEB and Dell Technologies, for being the primary underwriters of our summit. And just as a reminder, that summit has been rescheduled for April 20th, 2021. So I hope you'll all be joining us there. But thank you to each of the sponsors shown here for making all of our work possible in 2020. Next. Beyond our summit sponsors, I also wanted to extend deep appreciation to our program and project sponsors. This year, Enbridge and Phillips 66 stepped up to help underwrite both at the program level and project level our Conservation Wrangler program, and then Lida Hill Philanthropies underwrote our work with our conservation partners and enabled us to continue things like our media roundup and our outreach for all of our partners. So again, thank you. We are deeply appreciative of the continued partnership and action and funding for conservation, even in a crazy year such as 2020. So today we will hear from 3 projects covering water with the Constructed Wetlands Project, land with the Carmen Land and Conservation Company, and sky with the Dark Skies Initiative. In each case, these projects show collaboration, between conservationists, research, and industry. They are proven methodologies and best practices that can be replicated across Texas and beyond. And I'm excited to enter our time of learning and dialogue. So we will kick off with Daryl Andrews from the Tarrant Regional Water District. Daryl, go ahead and get started with you.
Joni, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. Well, I'm in an interesting place to have this conversation. First, let me say thanks for inviting us back. It's been a great collaboration and partnership with you guys over the last couple of years, so thanks for that. But I would say I'm way out in West Texas in Abilene, except the other two folks on the presentation are both several hours west of me and still in Texas, so they may not call Abilene west. But I'm sitting on the back porch of my mom and dad's house, and you know, when you talk about preservation and conservation, it's a lot of it is about the things that we hold dear, whether it's memories or whatever that might be for us. So this is a great spot to be having this conversation for me. I'm going to visit with you guys about our constructed wetland project, tell you a little bit about who we are, and then where we're headed with the project. So you can go ahead and advance the slide one. The Tarrant Regional Water District is we're a water supply group, and at our core, we're about water supply. We supply raw water to kind of the western half of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And so water supply is a big part of what we do, but also a big part of what we do is flood protection associated with those resources, as well as promotion of environmental sustainability in those projects. And then something more recently that we've added to our portfolio of focus is the recreational opportunities that those projects provide. So we'll spend some time talking about a project, this wetland, that kind of checks all those boxes for us. But you're seeing a system map. We've got 4 big surface water reservoirs that were constructed over the years, starting in the 20s, and the last one was Richland Chambers, which is on the bottom of the screen down there, built in the late 80s, completed back then. But again, we're capturing raw water from either the river, the Trinity River itself, or in the Trinity River Basin, or from tributaries that flow into the river. Right now, we're serving about 2.3, 2.4, edging toward 2.5 million people with our water supply that depend on that for us. And again, we're raw water, so we're selling to entities in 11 different counties that are, some of which are highlighted there in the system. We produce about 350 million gallons on an average day. That is either gravity flowed back to the city, or in the case of this wetland project, it's about a 90-mile pipeline that goes back up to the Metroplex. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see Richland Chambers about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way over on the bottom. Richland Chambers and Cedar Creek are those 2 reservoirs right there. They're our newest reservoirs, and those, I'm going to say, are not main stem reservoirs. And by that, I mean the dams for those reservoirs was not built on the river. And this becomes important because of the reuse function of this wetland project that we've got. And so water that flows into those reservoirs and then is pumped back to the cities, once it's returned, goes back to the Trinity, but it doesn't flow back into those reservoirs. And again, that becomes really crucial for this project. And go ahead and change the slide for me there. So this is that cycle that I'm talking about. If you're a drop of water, imagine that for me, and you're in Richland Chambers Reservoir, there's a really good chance that you're going to get sucked into a big giant pipeline at some point. From there, you're going to go to a city. You're going to go to a water treatment plant and be cleaned and sent to an end user, municipality, or an industrial user, or maybe just a homeowner. And you're used, and then you're going to eventually make it back into a wastewater treatment plant where you're cleaned back up. But then you make a trip back down toward the Gulf, because these treatment plants all discharge back into the Trinity Basin somewhere, specifically in this case in the Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield area up there. From there, again, you're headed back toward the Gulf. Back in the 90s, the early 90s, Well, let me back up. Because the projects that we build, these reservoirs are so costly and they are so complicated to build from a permitting perspective, we're forecasting 20, 30, 40 years out for future water needs. And back in the 90s, we were looking at future water supply, and something that had never really been contemplated in the nation was for reuse of water for drinking water supply. And we looked at several different options, and the one that's made the most sense to us was the use of constructed wetland to purify the water before it got reintroduced back into our system. And so that was kind of the inception of this wetland project. You can advance the slide for me. We did some work to take a look at what would happen if we introduced the water from the Trinity River and just pumped it straight back into the reservoir. But it was going to have some negative impact to sedimentation, high nutrients, the things that the Trinity area is kind of known for, just because we've got such heavy clays in our watershed, and that just happens in a stormwater runoff. Along with high nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, both of those things are problematic for us. So we needed a project that would protect the water quality of the reservoir and treat it to the best level that was practicable. And it needs to supplement those flows into the reservoirs. We wanted to target as a goal to have water produced and delivered to the reservoirs that was not any lesser quality than the tributaries that fed the reservoirs naturally. And again, so that's when we landed on this wetland idea. The other unique aspect of this project, and it's been a great collaboration partnership, has been the fact that there was property available right beside the reservoir. And I think you can probably go ahead and turn this slide to the next one. Yeah. That was available for use on this constructed wetland project. So what you're seeing right there, you can see Richland Chambers in the bottom part of the picture. That's a spillway, and this shot is looking north, and almost all of that land that you see there, that's the lighter green, is the constructed wetland, and that's built on what is owned by Parks and Wildlife, and it's the north unit of the Richland Creek Wildlife Management Area. And if you know anything about reservoir construction, often there's a issue with habitat loss because of the construction of those reservoirs. And the unique thing about this reservoir, or this water supply project, was that it allowed us to, instead of degrade habitat, it enhanced habitat, because this was all jurisdictional wetland. It had been cleared historically for agriculture uses, and the ability for us to provide a dependable water supply for this wetland was a great partnership between us and Parks and Wildlife. Go ahead and switch the slide. This is another shot of the wetland, and this is back if you're a water drop. This is how the water flows through the system. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see a couple of cells that really aren't, I'm a little bit further down, that really don't have any vegetation in them. So those are just really deep, 6-8 feet deep foot cells that the water stays in for 8 hours, depending on our pump rates. And then you begin your process of going through the wetlands, where you're going to get cleaned up naturally by the soil, by sunlight, by vegetation communities. And it takes you about a week to get through that system. And at the end of that system, you're pumped back over the dam into Richland Chambers, where you begin that cycle again and going back up to the Metroplex. The other unique collaboration thing that has been an opportunity for us on this is because Parks and Wildlife manages the public aspects of this property, because it's on their WMA. Tremendous use, thousands of hunters. We're about 2 hours from the Dallas-Fort Worth area here. And so we get thousands of hunters, hundreds of bird watchers every year. I think as of last month, they had identified 260 species, 260 species that had been seen on the project, and tremendous waterfowl right in the central flyway. So that's been a great collaborative effort there. You can give me one more slide. This is a project that really pictures don't do it justice on. The left one is where the water is coming back into the reservoir. The right one is a shot of Trinity River water on the right, and that jar on the left has got finished water that again has just been treated naturally by the plants and the sediment or the soils that are there on site, and really just harnesses Mother Nature to do that for us. Go ahead and give me one more slide. So kind of where we're going, we're going to need, again, we're 30, 40, 50 years out on our planning of these projects. And one of the things we have to do is say, okay, well, there's a host of things we could be doing for water supply, but what are the impacts? And one of those biggest impacts is cost. So as you look at this, I would direct you, I'm going to really kind of look at this graph backwards, but on the right-hand side, you're looking at $808.36 per 1,000 gallons treated. And this one kind of blows my mind, but this concept is, what if we went to the Gulf for water? So desalinization, big long pipeline, really expensive water for us. But if you go all the way to the left of this graph, you're seeing conservation and reuse. And conservation is just that. That's education of the end user about how to do things better and make what we have last longer. That is the cheapest option and makes the most sense. And so we're big fans of that, and it honestly has made a big difference for us as our water plans evolve. The next one over is the Cedar Creek Wetland project, and you can see that's in pretty close price range to what conservation costs, again, per 1,000 gallons. 86 cents per 1,000 versus 94 cents per gallon. And so from that impact, just the financial impact alone, these wetlands have been a really good cost savings for us. And there's some other important things that I'll mention as well too. Go ahead and give me one more slide turn. The next project we have is almost identical to the Richland Chambers project. And the Richland project, again, began in the 90s. We've been operating for several years now at a full scale, but we started small. We started with 2 acres, went to 450 acres. That went up to about 800 acres, and then we went to the 2,000 acres that we're at now. This project, because Richland has proved that Richland project, the Shannon Wetlands, has proven itself, we're going to go ahead and just go full blown on it and build it completely in one phase. But it's going to provide a little bit less water, about 88,000 acre feet, or 2,000 acres of footprint. And hopefully in about 10 years or so, that thing will be completed. But we're 5 or 10 years out from that. But that's an exciting side note on the Richland project, is it worked really well and was cost effective for us. The other things that I would mention here is that I tell you, give me one more slide, click. Yeah, that one. The other impacts, besides the financial impacts of these projects, if you look at the Richland Chambers Reservoir, when that thing was originally designed, it was 3 arms. So you got Chambers on the north, Richland on the south, but it had a TxN Creek arm going down toward the south, pointing down southeast. And you can see it's not there. That arm is about, I don't know, depending on where the dam would be located, probably 15 to 20,000 acres. And it would supplement flows to Richland Chambers by, on the order of about 100 million gallons a day. Okay, so you look at that 15 or 20,000 acres versus the 2,000 acres of that little green dot, the little green blob that's the wetlands. We get just as much water from that 2,000 acres as we would from the 15 or 20,000 acres of the TxN arm. Much easier to permit. And again, we looked at and sought out property that was already degraded from its initial wetland habitat. And instead of having to take out bottomland hardwood, we're enhancing it with waterfowl habitat and the things that come along with a constructed wetland. So it's been a great opportunity there. The other thing that I would tell you is these wetlands are drought tolerant. Surface water reservoirs maybe not so much, but because people are always going to be using water. We're always going to have these return flows that go back into the Trinity. And so from a resiliency standpoint, these wetlands are incredibly resilient for us and dependable under a drought scenario. And that gets us back kind of to where I started on the whole conservation and preservation side of things. Is these they're much more environmentally friendly projects. That's not to say that someday we might not need another reservoir, but again, our next step is going to be another wetland project. So I think that's about the end of my, I think I've got a turtle. Do I have a turtle? There's the turtle. So I know no questions are till the end. One question I would ask you, because we've used this turtle a lot, I don't think this turtle has a name. So if you want to chat me a little name for, I don't know if it's a he or a she, there's my question to you. So.
You probably have a few on this webinar who will be able to tell you whether it's a he or a she.
Probably so. Yeah. So this slide's pretty busy. That's just in case somebody asks specific questions. So we don't need that one.
So Daryl, thank you so much.
Sure.
It's inspiring to see the work that you're doing to using nature as a solution for our population growth. And it's more cost effective. It's going to be more beneficial for habitat and for, as I mentioned, the population growth moving forward. So excited to field questions. Again, if you do have questions, we will be moving to the next speaker at this time, but go ahead and put those questions or turtle name suggestions into the Q&A and we'll capture all of those. And we will go ahead and move to the next speaker. Again, you can put Q&A and just the double dialogue bubble at the bottom of your screen and put your questions in there or send to info@texanbynature.org. But next up, we have the pleasure of hearing from Bonnie McKinney from the El Carmen Land and Conservation Company, and she's going to be talking about broad-scale land conservation. So Bonnie, if you want to turn on your video and join us, we'll get your presentation put up. Hi there.
Hi, thank you. I am delighted to be here today representing CEMEX USA and Mr. Josiah Austin, who are the owners of El Carmen Land and Conservation Company, which is a really strategic connecting link in a transboundary corridor. I'm going to go over some of our earlier projects up to the summit in 2018, and then I'm going to start on our new projects since that time to sort of fill everybody in. Next slide, please. Our mission statement was developed in 2008. Basically, it's to restore the Chihuahuan Desert landscape, protecting some vital dispersal corridors for mammals and a known bird migration corridor in a transboundary area, which is a very strategic connecting link between northern Coahuila and West Texas, and to, of course, to restore the native wildlife and birds to sustainable levels through proactive land restoration, habitat enhancements, water developments, and then in the future, we hope to use the area as a demonstration site to show people just how you can manage and sustain a lower desert ecosystem. Next slide, please. The area, of course, is located in Brewster County, Texas. We're 71 miles south of Marathon. We border the state of Coahuila, Mexico to the south. And then we share a boundary with Big Bend National Park and the Black Gap Wildlife Management Area. It's Texas Parks and Wildlife. And if you'll notice where we're at in that little deal right there, we are literally that connecting link between those two conservation areas, which are huge. And it keeps all of these lands contiguous, which is very important. We have 6 miles of Rio Grande frontage, and our elevations are from about 1,580 feet along the Rio Grande corridor to around 3,900 feet at our highest elevations in the high country. And roughly 26,000 acres there that are either owned or leased. And a part of that does have a conservation easement on it on some of the deeded acres to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation. And I want to talk about these eras very briefly because we have a new project going that we're all very excited about. But these eras are basically just delineating a bird migration corridor that is very important, and it's connecting these two countries. It starts up to the northwest of us, runs down almost a 200-mile valley, comes down the Del Norte Mountains, the Santiagos, then into the Carmen Mountains in Texas, and then directly across and down the east side of the Carmen Mountains in Mexico. And then the Serranías del Burro, of course, are across that valley. And that is a very important bird corridor in both spring and fall migration. Next slide, please. I mentioned that connecting link, and you can basically see it in this photo. The Sierra del Carmen start 110 miles south in Mexico. They go northward, actually cross the Rio Grande, and then go for almost 70 miles where they join the Santiago Range in West Texas. Next slide. It is a documented dispersal corridor for large mammals and a known corridor for birds in spring and fall. The bird corridor was first documented in 1969 in Texas by Roe War, who was chief naturalist at Big Bend National Park. And later on, myself and a rancher in Mexico, Senora Elizabeth Spinstay Sellers, I had a bird banding project on their ranch in the Burro Mountains. And this big valley that runs all the way back to the Texas border, we documented flock after flock of migrants using this corridor. Also, by radio telemetry, we've been able to document the dispersal of large mammals, desert bighorn sheep, mule deer, and of course our black bears. Next slide. The area contains desert lowlands. Of course, I mentioned the 6 miles of Rio Grande frontage. We also have rolling hills, canyons, and then our higher elevation desert mountains. And something that's very important is we are right on we border the edge of the Mexican highlands. Next slide. Just a quick update on our conservation projects. We continue to do habitat enhancement, water developments, resting lands. Our wildlife populations are expanding and growing rapidly. Our bear population is well established now, and to date, I think we have 11 bears on the area. We also, our mule deer population has really taken a huge jump start, and it's doing very well. And if you'll notice to the left, there's a little Carmen Mountain white-tailed deer, and they normally are found at higher elevations, and they are actually down in that mid-elevation utilizing our water developments. Next slide. A current project that we're working on, it's a joint project with the joint venture, Chihuahua Desert Bird Area, Big Bend National Park, and Texas Parks and Wildlife. And basically, Big Bend National Park gave us 37 pole cuttings, 4 to 6 foot tall, and we planted those and have been irrigating these. And once they reach a little bit more maturity, then we'll be able to take poles from these trees and use them in other areas of the Big Bend region to reestablish the native trees. Next slide. Our quail projects, our gambles, and our scale quail are both doing very well. We continue to supplement feed our quail and provide waters in many different areas for them. Next slide. And of course, our elf owl nest box project continues. Next. We continue with our water developments. Currently, we have 8 Nevada style guzzlers, 5 traditional style guzzlers, and 6 small guzzlers. The Nevada style guzzlers and the small green guzzlers were all from grants from Dallas Safari Club, Wild Sheep Foundation, Mule Deer Foundation, and the Texas Quail Coalition. And then Texas Bighorn Society came in and built 5 traditional style guzzlers. And all of these guzzlers are scattered out over the landscape. A lot of areas we had some really great habitat, but no water sources. So these water developments are playing a huge part in our wildlife and bird work. Next. We use 15 miles of pipeline that runs from a well, and all of these drinkers that are on that line are developed and constructed so that everything can drink. The small guzzler on the top, birds can perch, and small mammals on the rocks. The round concrete trough has a ramp inside also. So no matter what the level, birds and small mammals can drink. And the same with the pipe, with the trough on the bottom, it has a small ramp. Next. We are looking at changes in bird diversity in response to the habitat enhancement work that we're doing in this lower Chihuahuan Desert elevation. Next. Something that I think is very important, you know, if you remember many years ago, the old saying about the canaries in the coal mines. Birds are barometers of our environment. And in November of 2019, Cornell University reported 2.9 billion birds lost since 1970. And this study showed for the very first time the staggering decline in our bird populations. And these were adult breeding birds. And the losses represented a host of different species. This year, in August and September in New Mexico, they reported six-figure numbers of dead and dying birds from across the state. And this was during fall migration. Also in West Texas, we found a number of sick and dying birds, and landowners were calling us saying we're finding dead birds around our headquarters. Some calls as far away as Rankin and Del Rio. Now the cause of the death loss has not been fully determined, but they are maybe thinking that it can be linked to the heavy smoke in the atmosphere from the fires in the west and the southwest, and also that terrific cold front that hit New Mexico early. It froze basically your insects, and birds migrating need those insects when they stop to feed during migration. Bird migration and lights, many thanks to former First Lady Mrs. Bush for her plea to Texans to cut the lights out in these big high-rise buildings. She probably saved many, many thousands of birds. A ton of birds are killed every year by these lights. Next. Birds need three things when they're migrating. They need places they can stop, they can rest, and refuel. And these are vital during both spring and fall migration. Next. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a stepping stone desert oasis for birds. This is a place that all species can stop, rest, and refuel, whether it's spring migration or fall migration. Next. We also have put in 8 acres of food plots. These are native grasses and forbs mixed with milo and white millet. It was amazing in August and September to see the number of birds feeding in here, and not just birds that specifically feed on seeds, but there's tons of insects in here. So we also had our flycatchers and other warblers and other species. Next. Once frost is in this area, then those seeds are going to fall off. The leaves, of course, on the plants turn brown, but this creates a food source not only for our wintering birds in the area, but also for our resident species as well. Next. Something that I am very, very excited about is the construction of a permanent wetland that we have built in the last 2 years. Everything coming through this big, wide open desert corridor can see this wetland for miles. And it's almost like birds drop out of the sky coming in to stop and get a drink of water. Next. These are just some of the photos of the different species that we've documented in this area. Next. And more. Next. We have been able to document several rare species for the area. White-tailed kite and a snow goose, which were very unusual for West Texas. And the white ibis, which is a coastal species. And he was so familiar with us by the end of the 3-month stay that he made that we named him. So we would say, well, we need to go find Sancho and see where he is. Our rarest species, the Reddish Egret, which is a watch species in Texas for sure. They're being watched very closely on all of their range. This bird we were able to document with a great photo. And our last visitor was arrived on the 24th of September and left the 30th, and it's a redneck phalarope. And what is so unusual about this bird breeds on the Arctic tundra. It's also very, very happy to be out over open, warm ocean waters and to show up in the lower Chihuahuan Desert. Granted, he was certainly off course, but he was able to find a place that he could stop, rest, and refuel. Next. I have a bird banding station there, and I have a research project going on the ecological and geographical distribution of birds in a lower Chihuahuan Desert ecosystem. And a lot of information by our banding. You can get information on longevity. You can get return birds that are migrating, whether north or south, and are coming back through that year, through your area the next year. You also pick up species out of normal range, and you also increase your diversity and your knowledge of what birds are used in this area. I also am looking at Valverde County, Del Rio area. We are seeing some really incredible movement there. Deep South Texas birds have started a sort of northward movement. Two species in particular that are now resident species that were, you always went to Deep South Texas to see these birds, and that's the greater Kiskadee and black-bellied whistling ducks. And that northward movement can be or could be in response to climate change. We're not sure on that yet. Next. Our preliminary results, our bird diversity from 2008 to 2013, we had only documented 152 species on the area. From 14 to 2020, it's jumped to 256 species. And I think probably with our habitat work and the wetland that we will probably top 300. Next. So what are we looking at for our future? We're going to continue our habitat work, continue to provide opportunities for our student groups and volunteers to work on conservation projects, and continue to work with our conservation groups and our many partners, and to work with our area landowners. Currently, we have one landowner that is doing a tremendous job of putting waters in areas for birds coming down that corridor. We're also engaging a second landowner up on the north end. So hopefully we'll be able to fill that corridor with places that birds can stop, rest, and refuel. Next. I want to say a tremendous thank you to TxN by Nature. They have brought a tremendous awareness to the El Carmen Land and Conservation Company project out here in West Texas. And a huge thank you to CEMEX USA and Mr. Josiah Austin, owners, for having the foresight to purchase this property, to keep it contiguous, and because it is such a strategic area. It's very, very rewarding to work for a company like CEMEX USA that cares so much about our environment and is continually doing projects. Thank you, and I will take your questions and answers later.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bonnie, for sharing a little bit about what you've learned, and also just showing a model that's very different than I think what we traditionally imagine when we talk about the breadth and depth of conservation that you're doing. To have an aggregate company write that into their long-term sustainability vision is very different, and an example that we can certainly all share. And then working with all of the folks that you do, the various conservation groups and landowners, and bringing all of those together, you're doing some tremendous work. So again, if you guys have questions, if you would put it in the Q&A, we'll be capturing those questions, or send an email to info@texanbynature.org. And next up, we will have Bill Wren from the McDonald Observatory talking about the Dark Skies Initiative. So again, put your questions in, and we're excited to hear from Bill. So Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Joni, and hello everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Super duper. All right, well, I'm here representing McDonald Observatory, University of Texas. It's an astronomical research facility out in the Davis Mountains of far west Texas. Next slide, please. There's an aerial shot of it. And the green, by the way, was not photoshopped in. We do get a rainy season late every summer, and it actually greens up out there. It's quite beautiful. But we've been on this mountaintop in the heart of the Davis Mountains since 1932 at an elevation of 6,800 feet. And seems like about every 30 years we get a new big telescope. The small dome in the distance there between the two in the foreground is the Hobby Eberly telescope. It's probably, depending on how you count, it's tied for the second largest telescope in the world today. Next, please. So here's a lay of the land, showing you the observatory at the center of a 7-county region. Each of these 7 counties and all of the cities within have outdoor lighting ordinances designed to protect the dark skies at McDonald Observatory for ongoing astronomical research. Now, mind you, county ordinances in Texas are kind of like unicorns. They're really not supposed to exist. But in 1978, the state legislature gave these 7 counties explicit permission to voluntarily enact lighting ordinances for the observatory. And 6 out of 7 over the decades did so. Reeves County was the lone holdout, and I think you'll see why here in a second. But in 2011, former Governor Perry signed a bill into law that changed the language from "these counties may adopt outdoor lighting ordinances" to "these counties shall adopt ordinances." So that shaded blue area constitutes right at 28,000 square miles, 18 million acres. It's the largest piece of ground that I know of on the planet whose skies are protected by law. Next, please. Introducing about 10,000 blue dots that represent drilling permits let by the Railroad Commission over a 10-year period of time. And that will explain why Reeves County was very reluctant to adopt a lighting ordinance voluntarily. They did not want any regulations to scare away the industry. But they came around, so that's good news. Next, please. Here's a satellite image showing light from the Permian Basin, and that's not population growth. In fact, the city of Pecos is pretty much lost in there, but it gives you an idea of the concern that was raised at the observatory with the encroaching artificial light going into the night sky. So we've been working with the oil and gas industry now for 7-8 years about keeping their light on the ground and out of the sky. This is about dark skies, not dark ground. We are not against outdoor lighting at night. That's a very important thing to understand, and it's a bit of a challenge to overcome that often with many of these oil and gas companies who believe from the get-go that the brighter the better. You just can't have too much light on your nighttime activities. But I think we've been able to demonstrate to them that there's a better way to go about it and help protect the night skies in the process. Next, please. So the skies overhead at McDonald Observatory are still extremely dark. They're naturally dark overhead, high up, the part of the sky of most interest astronomically. That's a photograph, by the way, of the 82-inch reflector, which was the second largest telescope in the world when it was dedicated in 1939. Next, please. So we have been keeping track of the sky brightness since 2015. We acquired a system that was originally developed by the National Park Service. It's an all-sky photometry system. It consists of a science-grade camera on an automated telescope mount, some batteries, a laptop computer, and a tripod. It's about 60 pounds worth of stuff. The National Park Service has been hiking this consider it the gold standard for measuring artificial sky brightness. Next, please. I just got an unstable connection error here for the first time. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. This is an example of some imagery that we collected in August. It's quite recent. That shows what that system provides. It basically takes 45 images of the night sky all the way around the horizon and up to the zenith, straight overhead. You can see the Milky Way on either side, thousands of stars. And knowing when and where these pictures were taken, the natural sources of light, the Milky Way and the starry sky, can all be subtracted from this image, leaving only the unnatural sources of light. Next, please. So what you see there, the glow on the horizon and the little bubbles on the horizon, that is light pollution. I'm hesitant to use the term pollution because it turns a lot of people off, but it is a very accurate description of what's going on. We're shining light wasted into the night sky, and it has the potential of obscuring our view. Very important to notice that almost all of the brightening that we're seeing is occurring down low to the horizon in the direction of the Permian Basin. It does not rise above 30 degrees above the horizon. So again, the skies overhead of most astronomical interest remain naturally dark. Next, please. For most of the history of the observatory, 70 plus years, the brightest thing in our night sky, the brightest source of light pollution visible to us emanated from El Paso, Juarez, some 165 miles to our west-northwest. And you can see that today the Permian Basin, the glow from light from the Permian Basin largely swamps that. And by the way, it's not just oil and gas specific activity. There is a lot of commerce that comes along with the boom in the oil field. So we're talking about new residences and chain stores and restaurants and what have you. So it all adds up. And that, by the way, is where the city ordinances to keep light on the ground come into play. Next, please. This is a plot of all the data points that we've collected since August of 2015. That first data point was with a unit we borrowed from the National Park Service, and then we replicated the system and have been collecting data on our own ever since. We do still rely on the National Park Service to process the data for us. We haven't developed the software yet to be able to do it in-house, but we're working in that direction. And if you look at the right side of the graph there, after a high of 49% above natural background in December, you can see it precipitously dropping to a low. I believe we hit 26% back in August. So there is the most recent bust in the oil and gas field, seen by the amount of light being emitted into the sky. Next, please. So people will ask frequently, so how much of the light you're seeing from the Permian Basin is coming from the exploration and production side, or the exploration side or the production side? How much of it's from flaring? How much from drilling rigs? How much from permanent lighting? I don't really have a good answer for that. I can say that the Railroad Commission has committed to eliminating flaring by 2025, which will certainly go a long way in helping to protect our skies. Next, please. We found a gentleman who owned Pioneer Energy Services who gave us access to his fleet of drilling rigs. Pioneer Energy Services, by the way, is well, they're out of business now from this last bust, but they were located in San Antonio, Texas, not to be confused with Pioneer Natural Resources. At any rate, they believed that the night sky was worth protecting and gave us access to lighting on their drilling rigs, and we were allowed to make some changes as part of a demonstration project to show what kind of lighting practices that we were trying to promote. Next, please. So first day on the rig, we discovered this explosion-proof light. You can see the wire mesh around the globe there with this rag stuffed up in it. Next, please. That is the same fixture seen from the perspective of the driller. This is a very old rig, but the driller would stand at this console and he needs to see those dials and gauges to be able to operate the rig safely, and that light was in his line of sight. So his solution, next please, was to stuff a rag up in there to knock down the glare to increase the visibility so that he could see better. So we approached Pioneer Energy Services and they sprung for the cost. It turns out that the manufacturer of that light fixture does offer optional shielding. Next, please. So they purchased the shield and installed it on that light. There are two things going on here. One is the light that was shining wasted upward from this fixture is now reflected down onto the deck, so you have more light on the working surface. And next, please. And much less glare in the driller's eyes. So everybody was happy. Pioneer bought more shields and shielded all the lights on all of these rigs. Next, please. So you can see the result of that undertaking. So this was a demonstration project. It showed them that, in fact, by shielding the lights, you could get more light on the ground, more light in the work area, less glare in workers' eyes, and actually improve visibility. So when Pioneer set about selling off these old rigs and designing and building new ones, they incorporated the night sky friendly lighting practices into their new design. Next, please. So there's a side-by-side example. Now, both of these photos were taken from above, looking down. The old lights, you can see the bare bulbs. There's a lot of glare. And again, as seen from above, that tells you that there's a lot of light simply shining wasted into the sky. The right image shows fixtures, new LED fixtures that are designed to put all the light down into the sides and no light shines above the horizon. They've used this to great effect on their new rigs. Next, please. Is an example of a long catwalk with nothing but night sky friendly lighting in use there. Next, please. There we go. In February of 2019, the Railroad Commission issued a notice to operators. I don't expect to read the fine print, but their summary sentence, the conclusion they arrived at was that the solutions can be simple and cost effective and can actually improve nighttime visibility and increase worker safety. And when you hear, if you're in the oil and gas industry and you hear increased worker safety from the Railroad Commission, it gets your attention. So with that demonstration project in hand, we were able to approach the Railroad Commission indirectly through friends, basically, because I'm a state employee. I can't approach an elected official about any kind of regulation. But who was it? It was oh gosh, the Texas landowner, the people that have mineral rights. The name is escaping me right now, but it'll be on the next page, please. Next. You'll see the different people that signed on to this. It actually is the recommended lighting practices were developed in coordination with the Permian Basin Petroleum Association, Ben Shepard, Stephen Robertson, and their outfit. And yet it was TIPRO, actually, Texas Independent Producers and Royalty Owners, that approached the Railroad Commission and requested a meeting and helped us get that notice to operators generated. The American Petroleum Institute has signed on, and TxN by Nature's support has been invaluable. This slide is a great example. A lot of times we'll speak to groups and ask them simply, just do a demonstration. Find one facility or just one corner of one facility. In this example, they had floodlights that were aimed up at high angles, creating a lot of glare and spilling a lot of light into the sky. We asked them simply to point them straight down. And the result was much less glare. The employees could say they could actually see where they were walking now, and so on. So it's a win-win situation. Here are this is an Apache Corporation facility near Balmorhea that was designed from the ground up, again, to use night sky friendly lighting. You might notice the warm white color temperature there as opposed to the cold blue white light that a lot of people choose because they think they want to light it up like daylight. Well, your eye doesn't work the same at night. And then this is a major compressor station that they built, again, using all the same kind of lighting. It is night sky friendly. Next, please. So what next? Again, I think it's a seeing as believing kind of thing. This is a very visual topic. We can, talk to people and they can read about it, but until they actually see it with their own eyes, it doesn't always register. So demonstration projects have been invaluable for us to show people in the industry that yes, in fact, this is better lighting. So the most important thing is to share the results with your peers. I mean, Apache Corporation, WPX, and some others have embraced this lighting as better for their operations. And there's only a few thousand more companies to go. So it's very important that this information, it's really a campaign of education and awareness to show them what the good lighting looks like. Next, please. So last on the list, McDonald Observatory is applying to the International Dark Sky Association to create an International Dark Sky Reserve that will include the Big Bend National Park, Black Gap, Big Bend Ranch State Park, Chenati Mountain State Park, the Nature Conservancy, McDonald Observatory will all be part of the core of the reserve. And we're actually now discussing extending the boundary to the north to include the springs at Balmorhea and Balmorhea State Park. So we want to bring those areas into the Dark Sky Reserve. We're also working with folks south of the river. In fact, I'm so glad that Bonnie was on today. They have agreed that CEMEX will have no difficulty in writing a letter of support for this effort. Right now, we're basically getting all of the ordinance language in the 3 counties and the half a dozen or so cities to be in alignment with the IDA criteria for a dark sky reserve. But again, what made this possible was win-win. Good lighting for the oil industry, good lighting for McDonald Observatory, and as far as the Dark Sky Reserve goes, the good lighting for the night skies will also help promote tourism to the area, which again is another win-win formula. So that seems to be the trick for us, is to recognize the advantages to the end user. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. And that's exactly right. It's a win for our natural resources. It's a win for our economy, and it's a win for our health. And in this case, the safety of our workers that are in that area. So we are coming at the end of our time. Daryl and Bonnie, if you guys want to rejoin us on video, we will answer every question that's been submitted and send that out to all attendees. So if you still have specific project questions, please do submit those on the Q&A or to info@texanbynature.org. But in the interim, I'd like to just answer one question as we're wrapping up, and Daryl, will start with you. But I'd like to understand, what is the one lesson that you've learned from the project that you presented today that the folks who are here can take back and mull over and think about applying at their own space? And then how would they get involved with you moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great, can you hear me okay? Am I back? You can hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Good question. I get that question often because not everybody can spend a gazillion dollars on a giant wetland system, right? Something that we're promoting, because at the heart, this wetland treats water that is high in turbidity, high in sediment, high in nutrients. And for most of us, that's where we encounter it on a daily basis, is stormwater. And it may be on an urban lot, or it may be at our business or whatever. And so I think this project has proven that nature does that very well on its own without having to build a bunch of concrete and pipes and those kinds of things. So the resiliency of nature to treat stormwater is kind of the take-home lesson from this. From an urban perspective, it's called green stormwater Green Stormwater Infrastructure, GSI. We're promoting that, Joni, a lot these days because it just makes sense, and it's using nature, it's harvesting nature to do what we can't do very well on our own. So
Thank you, Daryl. And Bonnie, same question to you.
Joni, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I think something that is very important is what you headlined this, TxN by Nature did, is we're all in this together. And I think everybody working together is going to be really our win-win in conservation of our land and our waters for future generations. I think we have to look way down the road. Birds are only a small part of that, but our lands are so important, and our waters.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bonnie. And we will have a question coming to you after this for anybody who wants to stay on. Bill, same question to you, the big take home for others that they can apply to their own projects. And you're on mute.
I can only really reiterate what I said before about it needing to be, well, a win-win situation in order to succeed. We're not going to get anywhere hitting people over the head with regulations and ordinances and what have you. At least that's my opinion. I'm much more about education and awareness and showing the people the advantages of this light, these types of lighting practices for them in terms of cost efficiency, reduced glare, improved visibility, increased safety, and oh, by the way, it also helps to protect the night sky for science at McDonald Observatory. So how that would apply to other areas, say water or land conservation, how to frame that as a win-win may be more of a challenge, but it's pretty straightforward when it comes to outdoor lighting.
Thank you, Bill. And then one final question is, how do companies, and this was one from one of our attendees, how do companies go about starting one of these projects or getting involved? And Bonnie, that came about specifically while you were talking. I think they were inspired by CEMEX starting a conservation company. Do you have any recommendations on how to get started with something like that?
Sure. You know, CEMEX is, I mean, they have been involved in conservation for many, many years, probably 25 to 30 years. To get started in this, you know, you don't have to go out and buy a chunk of land. It helps. And because we're not making any more lands. And I think that's important to remember as far as corporations being able to really help out in that respect. You can do small projects, small businesses, even your urban people that, I mean, you can just put a pan of water out for birds and it helps. But to get started in a big project, it does take quite a bit of funding, and you have to have staff, you know, and and of course your staff is going to be people that are in the conservation business. So it's a process, but it can be done. Careful planning and talking to people and visiting areas, and then making a decision of just what type of project that you actually want to be involved with.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
And in wrap up, again, I want to thank Daryl, Bill, and Bonnie for taking the time to be with us today to share some truly impactful, broadly and deeply projects in conservation. And I also, again, want to thank the partners and sponsors that I mentioned at the beginning of the call, HEB, Dell, Lyda Hill Philanthropies, Enbridge, Phillips 66, for helping us to do the work that we do. But in wrap up, you heard the theme across all. There's a collaborative nature to each of these projects. They're pulling in landowners, they're pulling in community leaders, they're pulling in industry to not only fund, but to implement their learnings moving forward. And so these projects really represent how we move forward as Texans together working. As Bonnie mentioned, no matter if you're a small business and it's something that you can do on your porch or the little bit of space that you have, or if you're a big corporation that can look broadly at owning land or even funding initiatives across the state of Texas and beyond, there are a lot of projects out there that are doing this. They're looking not only at a specific species, but they're pulling in the overall impact, whether it's safety, whether it's human health, whether it's property values moving forward. And we're working to look at the longer term implication of the work being done. So we encourage you to be creative in your approach. Talk cross-industry, cross-focus, talk to your conservation partners, your industry partners on how to more creatively look at the benefits of your project and message those, and potentially even draw a bigger vision for those projects moving forward. And that's the future. We're all in it together, and we have an opportunity to replicate these types of projects and even make them bigger than originally dreamed. So again, thank you to each of you for joining us today. We'll follow up with a survey. So any commentary you have on how to make December session better, I hope that you'll share that feedback. And also, I hope you'll go ahead and register for the December session and join us on December 10th again from 12 to 1. So thank you all, and look forward to talking with you in the coming days and weeks. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joni.